Enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening and welcome to The Late Show with Tim Smale. I'm Tim Smale. I'm going to wish you all a happy new year, happy winter break, a Merry Christmas, and however you celebrated, I hope you had a wonderful break. I also think it's probably our favorite time of year as we as teachers become weather predictors. We look at the clouds, we see a snow's coming, and we do the snow dance in the hope that maybe school will be closed in the morning. So without further ado, our show today is going to be about the sixth form, and I'll be introducing shortly my guest, Daniela Schillaci Rowland, as we talk about whether or not the sixth form years are truly the transformative years for our young people. And in our first featurette, have I got news for you? And I'd like to just round up some of the headlines over the past couple of weeks as we rouse ourselves from this kind of cold, stinky, icy weather. We wrap ourselves in blankets and we settle in for the show tonight. So the BBC reported that hundreds of schools have been shut and travel severely disrupted after heavy snowfall and freezing temperatures across the UK. I do still think that these are teachers' very favourite days. UK universities extend their careers advice to graduates in their 40s and 50s. The Guardian reported that growing numbers of institutions are now offering lifelong career support as older alumni seek help to change jobs. University careers advisors are increasingly seeing graduates in their 40s and 50s looking for help to revive their careers. That's actually fortunate timing for me because the Chelsea and Man United manager jobs have just become available and I am indeed in my 40s, so I will be asking for some careers advice. We have the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, and everything that girls need to know is being distributed by the Home Office in its strategy, which was launched in December. It's been backed by a £20 million package to stamp out misogyny and keep girls safe, with many policies focused on early interventions in education settings. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said, investing in our teachers and ensuring they can respond to the realities that children face today is so vital to renewing our communities and protecting young women. Some GCSEs and A-levels in England could be taken on laptops by 2030, according to Ofqual. The Guardian reported that this was amid complaints from pupils of writing fatigue in exams because their hand muscles are not strong enough. I did say that seriously without laughing. Writing fatigue because their hands are not strong enough. Ofqual is launching a 3-month public consultation about the introduction of on-screen assessments. London free school meals expansion has not boosted attainment, according to the evaluation. And the Schools Week reported the Mayor of London's university primary free school meal scheme did not improve pupil attainment in its first year. What was most pleasing for me to see in the EEF's evaluation of this is that they weren't using that as the key indicator of success. They talked instead about the difference to family finances, stress levels, and the impact it had on people. Do you know what? Making decisions with kindness first, I'd rather focus on those metrics than attainment. Generation AI, there are fears of a social divide unless all children learn computing skills, and children are growing up as AI natives, and experts say computing skills should be on par with reading and writing. That automatically puts me into trouble. And also there's a recruitment crisis coming. The readers of the Independent newspaper debated recently the looming teacher strike threat. One comment in that debate stood out for me. This person said they got a massive pay deal from Labour after getting an above average pay deal from the Tories. It's time we looked at AI in the classroom. No more teachers, but better paid teaching assistants who would work with the AI. Other countries have already started on this path and it's time we followed. I have decided to replace myself in this radio show. No, I'm sorry, I can't keep a straight face. Let's not do away with teachers. I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. So today we are going to be talking about sixth form, the transformative year. Our aim today is not to sell a particular way to teach or a particular methodology, but it is designed to spark discussion, debate, and curiosity. So if you do have any thoughts, ideas, questions, or feedback, then please do pop a comment on the live feed. And if you're listening and catching up via your favorite streaming site on the podcast, then please do direct message me on LinkedIn. Today, I get to introduce a wonderful guest. It is Daniela Schillaci Rowland. She is someone who's been teaching for over 20 years. And I believe of those over 20 years, I've known Daniela for 21 of those. She doesn't look a day older than 26. But she is someone who has worked in a variety of different roles, starting out as a design and technology teacher, and then becoming a bit of a pastoral guru, working in roles such as head of house, curriculum year leader, head of year, and a current head of sixth form. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome onto the show my good friend, Daniela.
Hi.
Hi. There is no expense spared on my special effects in any way, shape, or form. It's absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I won't lie to our listeners that we do have a history of being friends. I think someone's leveled that accusation at us before. I've also made sure that Daniela is not allowed to make any jokes at my expense in any way, shape, or form.
I'll try not to.
Thanks. So in today's show, we're going to dive into life in the sixth form, because sixth form is often seen as a place of opportunity. And with that opportunity comes pressure. It comes with transformation and challenge. Today, I want to explore the impact of the curriculum review. We'll focus to some part of the show on design and technology, as well as on the sixth form as a whole. We're going to look at the funding pressures that sixth forms face, as well as these ever sort of changing university demands for our young people. And together with your help, dear listeners, we will look at the impact all of this has on the resilience of our young people in education today. So Daniela, the pressure's on. I'm going to turn the show to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your teaching journey? How did you get into teaching?
I have wanted to be a teacher since even before I can remember going to nursery. I've got two older siblings, and it just seemed like the biggest amount of fun when they'd go off every day and they'd come back happy as well. And really, throughout my primary education, it was all I'd ever wanted to do. I did think about primary education, but I was asked at secondary school by a head of maths, why primary? And I said, I just really like the idea of having the same class all of the time. And he said to me, do you really want to be wiping like snotty noses? And I thought, maybe not. So I don't know if you know this, but actually history was going to be, I think we have spoken about this, but history has always been and still is a great love of mine. But my own experience is that not every student loves history. But design and technology, I had the most amazing teacher at secondary school, which I think is very common for a lot of teachers that love their jobs. And the rest is history, really, literally. Design and technology is what I do. I love the fast pace of the subject. I've been incredibly lucky to work in some amazing teams, but also design and technology teachers are really good at networking. Yeah. So I've been really fortunate to either go and support in other schools or be part of actually exploring the subject across nationally as well.
So what I love, I think, is that you could probably step into the classroom and teach my subject of history. But if you ask my wife, she would 100% tell you that I could not come into the classroom and teach your subject. It's why we have wonky shelves. Hopefully you can't see them in the background, but we have wonky shelves, and I'm not forgiven for it. So you're current head of sixth form. What was it that sort of kind of encouraged you to move in that direction and to go into sixth form leadership?
Yeah, if I'm going to be really honest, I wasn't sure that sixth form was ever for me. I like working with young people anyway, but I think that there's something quite brilliant about the younger years because they're trying to work out who they are. And I don't know whether it's society, but it seems to be that the sixth form students actually seem younger than they used to be. they're a bit less independent, for example, and they need a bit more sort of guidance and sort of stabilizers on, if you like. So maybe that's why I'm really, really enjoying the sixth form now. But historically, I started off as a head of house, which was kind of a really nice way to be a pastoral lead on something, but it was more about the enrichment rather than the actual leading of a year group. Then went into year 7 at the school that we both taught at, which I absolutely loved. And then we switched the system. So actually we went to the house system. I'm sure you can remember.
Yep.
If I'm really honest, pastorally, I still believe that overall as a pastoral leader, it's the best job, because you're actually getting to grips with families and really understanding about when the younger siblings come through, rather than actually just taking a year group and then just sort of moving along with them and either staying with that year group, or in one of the roles I had when I worked in London, I was literally just the head of year 9, and it was to get them in, sort them out, and then move them on to Key Stage 4, which I did really enjoy in that role. The school was very different, but then they take on year 8 as well, so it was quite nice to have a bit of continuity. And then now with the sixth form, when I started my current school, I was actually only part-time, because by that stage we'd had the 3rd child, like our own one, obviously, not children like in school. And I needed a bit of a break. So I was then put in the sixth form team because of my experience, got to do some amazing things with UCAS and that kind of thing. Yeah. And then the opportunity came available when I went full time again. And yeah, it's been, I think I'm in my 4th year now with the sixth form. And like you said, like a term into head of sixth form. So yeah.
Yeah, I was head of sixth form. I absolutely love it. It's a school within a school as well. So you really can kind of influence the community and the idea and the way that people view themselves. And also I think it's really exciting because you're kind of talking about the future, like everything that you've worked for. What is it you want to go and do, and opening eyes. And I loved it. So tell me then, in terms of leading a sixth form that's in a sort of predominantly girls' school, because up to the end of GCSE, it's an all girls school, and then it goes co-ed as you go into the sixth form. What's that kind of like? Do things kind of change as it becomes co-ed in the sixth form, or what's that relationship like for you?
I remember when I was training to be a teacher, and they said to me, "Oh, we're going to put you in an all-girls school." And I said, "Look, don't ever put me in an all-girls school, because it's just never going to be for me. Like, I teach a subject that is predominantly perceived as being more sort of like on the boys' side." I said, "I'm happy to go to an all-boys school." And then what happened was they obviously put me in an all-girls school. And within a couple of weeks, well, actually, it wasn't even a couple of weeks, it was a couple of days, you forget about gender completely. And I think there is something I feel quite privileged to have seen this in 2 different schools now. And actually, the core is the same. It isn't about the gender, or it shouldn't be. And I was lucky enough to work at previous school and my school now, where gender isn't seen at all. And it gives them a real sense of, I suppose, freedom to really be who they want to be, almost without constantly being told there's competition there or you need to try and impress. So when the boys then join us, I suppose it's complete role reversal to how it would normally be in other situations. And they fit in perfectly. We're really lucky we've got almost 300 students across both year groups in the sixth form. And we've probably got about 30 to 40 boys across the 2 year groups as well. And I actually toured a young man today who is looking for next year. And when I toured him, he said, "This doesn't feel like an all-girls school. It's not how I thought it was going to be." So I said, "Well, what did you think it was going to be?" And he said, "Really loud, like super girly, lots of sort of handbags." There are a lot of handbags, but
of course.
Yeah. And he just said, "This is actually different to what I thought it was going to be." we do spend a lot of time trying to ensure that the boys do feel like they have completely got an equal footing at our school as well. So we work quite hard on like our PSHE offering and also some other bits as well that we do.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Gotta have the special effects. So today we're going to be diving into Daniela's thoughts on the curriculum review, as well as design and technology. We're going to be talking about the unique pressures facing sixth forms today and the impact this has on the resilience or lack thereof of our young people. Plus, we're going to have lessons learned, a marking break, and our shout-out board. And of course, for Daniela, the real pressure comes with our quick-fire quiz at the end of the show. So just a shout out now for Hatchet Learning. The show is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning. Publishers are professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. So we're going to move into part number one. We're going to talk about the curriculum review as well as the impact that's had on design technology and sixth forms. So Daniela, can we start with the big picture? Like, what are your initial thoughts from the perspective of both a head of sixth form and a teacher of design and technology on the curriculum review?
I suppose when I first looked at the document, I think it was like 80 pages long. And you start to think about, what does this actually mean to me as an educator, but also someone who is massively passionate about the sixth form and also design and technology as well. And I was actually pleasantly surprised about what depth they went to actually look into design and technology. I've been really fortunate that in the last few years, I've worked with a group that we've called ourselves sort of Brace, and then it's like the Design and Technology Steering Group. And this has been made up of some amazing people across design and technology, someone called Alison Hardy, Matt McLean, Kay Stables, Richard Kimball. And these are names like I remember being at uni and hearing about these people as well. I'm not sure if they were part of that review, but we have tried to look at design and technology ourselves as a group and brought lots of sort of classroom teachers on board as well, heads of department, people that have gone on or previously were advanced skills teachers back in the day. We're all really passionate about our subject. And one of the things that always comes up about our subject is about our identity. And I suppose the reason why it's quite hard is because we're not there. It's always moving. Technology is always moving on. New materials are coming out. So actually, we're trying to figure out what we might look like in the future, but we don't know what the future looks like. So the review has identified these key things that actually we've already looked at. So that was quite good. I suppose the other issue is that it's where it sits in the curriculum. Yeah. Some people in the past have thought that it's like a craft and it's creative, and it obviously is. But equally, it links quite a lot of the core subjects. There's quite a high level of science within it, maths. The students actually do a lot of research. There's lots of skills that go into it. So it's quite difficult sometimes trying to explain to someone what design and technology in 2025 looks like, as opposed to CDT in the sort of late 80s and 90s as well.
Yeah, I do remember CDT, doing a bit of metal work and a bit of electronics. Actually, these were eye-opening experiences for me. And then, certainly throughout my career, you started to see certain subjects being sort of affected in a negative way in terms of, the importance was thrown, I guess, towards the EBAC subjects. And then that left a little bit less space for some of those more creative and some of those more sort of physical kind of subjects. And now there's been that elimination of the EBAC suite. Do you think that's going to open space for subjects like design and technology?
Yeah, I mean, I am really fortunate that I've worked in schools where it's always been really well supported. When I first started at the school that we worked at together, it was a compulsory subject, and then it actually became a non-compulsory subject. So that did have an impact, but it was gradual, especially at that school, because we had so many different sort of classrooms and members of staff that were really highly skilled in those particular material areas. And then I suppose that even the school I'm at now, our uptake actually for GCSE and A level has always been quite good. And because we've kind of made a reputation for ourselves now, my A-level class, for example, 50% of them are actually boys that have come to us from other schools. So it's quite nice, really. It's almost too... it's almost going against the grain, if you like, on two areas. Design and technology is quite successful when our students see the worth of it and how it actually links to those soft skills that could be used in industry or at work. But equally, we're a subject that should really be, or was perceived as, a boys' subject in the 80s and 90s. And actually, it's got a good uptake of young ladies who are now choosing to go to university and doing things, for example, like architecture, engineering, those sorts of things as well.
So do you think that with the changes kind of proposed with the curriculum review, I don't know if your school would be looking at doing things like the B levels. Do you think that will sort of affect A-level uptake? Do you think there is the desire and demand for more students to kind of go down that more vocational route? It's not necessarily sure where they want to go and whether they want to go to university, or do you think you'll stay with the A-level program? And
I feel for us as a school, we will 100% stay with the A-level, just because it is really quite challenging. There are probably things that, we would like to see within the specification, for example. It's very content heavy. It relies a lot on students' understanding of application of materials and those kinds of things. However, the way that we kind of work it has to be really the students developing as designers. But that's something that actually happens at our school, in year 7. We get them to actually see this is about design, this is about technology, for example, and understanding how it all fits. But actually, it's a journey that they actually feed through. And a lot of it is actually their own sort of skill building about being able to problem solve, actually work out, how things work and all of those sorts of things too. So
what's the traditional direction once they've completed their A-levels? Those students who have studied a subject like design and technology, what's their sort of typical pathway after they leave sixth form?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because, again, we get such a range. Obviously, we do get the traditionals. Like I said, they go to do product design, architecture, they'll go on to do engineering. But equally, we had a student a couple of years ago, and this does happen a bit more often than that. But she emailed me and said, "Oh, Miss, can I come in and actually talk to the GCSE and A-level students?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." And she actually went off to Bath Uni to go and do economics. So I wondered what she wanted to talk about, but I was open to it because we're really big on allowing those students who want to come back to actually come back and share their experience. And she then told the students that for her year out in industry, she'd applied to 5 different companies and she was offered all of them. And she decided to go with a company that were looking at logistics, about travel and those kinds of things. And all they were interested about in her interview is talking about her A-level design and technology project, because it's project managing, it's managing your own time, it's meeting deadlines, it's being creative, it's doing some excellent research. It's about, working within a team. It's about sharing your ideas and actually getting them down on paper. And it's about working through those issues when, for example, you might come up with a material, but then actually when you put it into practice, it might not work as you intended it to at the design stage. So it's about that kind of iterative design as well.
Do you think that there are kind of maybe pressures on students and the perception of how design and technology is perceived in terms of the advice maybe they get with careers or the perception they get from higher education? Do you think there are any sort of stereotypes that come out and maybe affect?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all of the time. We get parents that come and see us on options evening, for example, in year 9, and they'll say, well, tell me what design and technology is. So then when I start talking to them about communication, and it's about, you know, all of the soft skills as well as the creative, the designing, the making, they see that actually it's very different to what they might have had when they were actually growing up and having design and technology too. But there is always going to be a bias. And, you know, to a certain extent, I think it depends where the school is, what area the school is in the country, what the head teacher, for example, their focus might be, the head of department's focus. And as I said, I've been really lucky that I've worked within design and technology departments rather than just working in graphics or product design or resistant materials. It's very much been that we're all design specialists, whether that's, you know, food technology, textiles, electronics I've worked with before, all of the different areas. And it's about collaborating and sharing ideas about how we can get the best out of students and move them into pathways that actually suit their skill set better.
Yeah. So what's the future then of design and technology, do you think? Like, following the curriculum review, following the attitudes that you see, is design and technology going to get a resurgence? Is it one of those that's going to remain under pressure? Like, what's your kind of view in the direction of DT?
I think it will depend where they sit it in terms of once they've finalised the, you know, what the outcomes for the review are. Because at the moment we're either sat with the creatives or potentially we might be put in as one of the buckets for science.
Yeah.
I don't, if I'm going to be really honest, I don't have a preference. And I think that that's probably because being a design and technology teacher, we're used to change and having to adapt anyway. I just feel that whatever version of design and technology it is, I'll make sure that, you know, the students in front of me, whether that's, you know, a girls' school or a mixed school, or whether it's going to be in Hertfordshire or in London or wherever, it's right for that setting and also the local area as well. Because I think sometimes we underestimate how important that actually is. You know, the needs of that area can be really important as well.
Thank you. If you have any comments or thoughts that either apply for Daniela or myself, please post them online now. And as we move towards the end of the show, we're going to debate, we're going to discuss, we'll challenge, and we'll question your thoughts. So please do contribute to our show. I'd also like to shout out for Bet, and I'd like you to join Bet in the biggest week in education from the 21st to the 23rd of January 2026 in the Excel London, with immersive workshops, thought-provoking speakers, hundreds of hours of CPD accredited content, cutting-edge technology, and unrivaled networking. There's no opportunity quite like it for educators. You can get your free ticket today by visiting uk.betshow.com. So, Daniela, what lessons have you learned as a teacher? Like, what was a mistake or a tough moment that ended up teaching you something valuable?
I think it's those moments, like you said, where you learn the most out of. I think I've become very good, and I don't know whether this is just because I'm old now or whether it's because I'm a mum. I have become much better at being able to identify when I can't take on any more. I think we've all been there as teachers where you want to please either management or your head of department, or actually you just feel that you're there completely for the students and you keep needing to say yes all of the time. And one thing that I've got really good at, I'm still not great at saying no, if I'm going to be really honest, but what I am much better about doing is prioritising. And it may be that something may not be done at that exact moment, and I'll just need to make sure that I manage it in a way that it's still going to get done, but it may not be as it would have been, say, 10 years ago, for example. So I think that that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned, and drink more water.
Yeah, I think that's an important one.
You need to.
Youthful skin as well. You know, I think one of the best pieces of advice I received was someone who's pretty connected to you, your other half, and I think at the sort of early on in my career, I was sort of struggling a little bit because the demands of the profession can be so so overwhelming. They are wonderful in so many ways, but there's so much to do. And his advice was how to help me create space for myself. And in the end, the kind of decisions that went is that we had a little breakfast club, right? That I ended up kind of starting to go to. And it kind of changed my whole idea. You start to realize you're not on your own. And it was that communication with other professionals in the building, but also people who had a sense of humor or a similar outlook to myself. And, you know, I do think our ability to say no, but also creating that mental space as well is so important and often sort of undervalued. Okay. We'll see if they work. We'll see what the listeners say, but they're not saying anything at the moment. We'll see what they say. So we're going to move on to part 2, the pressures on sixth formers. So some of this might well relate to what you see with design and technology, but we're talking about the broader picture now of the sixth former. What are the main pressures that you're seeing on the horizon for sixth forms?
Yeah, I think that exam pressure is something that definitely is becoming a lot more prominent in sixth form, or it seems to be. And I also think as well that the pressures on 16-year-olds in general is massive now. I think we all know social media is great in one respect because, like you've mentioned about AI, for example, but the reality is that there is a lot out there that I suppose as adults we're never going to be able to 100% stay on top of, because these young people are reaching out to them all the time and sort of grabbing their attention. I think focus is something that seems to be something that young people do struggle with, and resilience is something that we found that we're actually trying to build. So we've kind of changed our language about how we speak to our sixth form, and it's more about really getting them to understand that when they start with us in the sixth form, it's actually an 18-month journey. Because it isn't a full 2 years. And it's about getting them to see that actually the purpose of sixth form is obviously to get the qualifications for the next stage of their lives, but that we want them to leave as really well-rounded people. So it is about that sort of resilience. It's about them trying to build up their own confidence. And I think that one of the biggest things as well is students need or are starting to improve, but it's more about them being in control of their own research, looking where things might be. So, for example, I'll have a student that says, "Oh, I don't know where to look for this," or "Can you tell me where to look?" Well, where do you think you need to go? So it's about those conversations rather than us sort of spoon feeding. And I think that what's happened with GCSEs is that we've become really good at knowing exactly how we need to teach it to get to the grade that we want them to. But A-level is very independent. And I think that there needs to be, whether that comes out of the curriculum review, but I think that there needs to be some sort of bridging. I'd say that they're the biggest things that we're looking at the moment, and the societal pull on young people as well to be perfect.
So, like, it's an interesting thing, because we're going to talk about the pull from universities, and we look at the number of students who are accepted to universities has gone up massively. Is there more pressure on young people, or is there less pressure on young people? But then at the same time, we have, we do see resilience issues. We do see ever increasing mental health concerns. Like it's pronounced, but is it down to social media, or is it down to us in education? Is it something that we're doing wrong, or that education has got wrong?
I suppose that things in education, we know, come round again and again. It's on like a cycle. And I don't feel that actually is an educational thing. I think the expectation on exams is higher because you look at the papers now, and I don't know if you feel the same about history ones from when you first started teaching, but they do seem quite different with regards to, say, design and technology. I look at the A-level papers from 15 years ago, and the questions that they're asking seem to be a lot more basic than what they are now. they tend to have more exams, for example, and the exams tend to be quite longer. So, for example, people are shocked sometimes when we say that design and technology have got a 2.5-hour exam and an hour and a half, and then on top of that, obviously, half of the course is coursework as well. But I think that I think for young people, I think that social media is something that we do need to be educating them a bit more about, what the good stuff is, what the not so good stuff is. And ultimately, they do have to make their own decisions because they are young adults who are about to go into this big wide world. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something I would love to kind of get my teeth stuck into. I think maybe for a future show, but the impact I see on sixth formers and their ability to be independent. Partly, I feel like we're not necessarily teaching it in schools. But at the same time, do we necessarily have time to? There's so much pressure, and at the same time, our young people are available all the time. I don't know if it's the same culture in your school. In my school, although I think I've set the standard with students, it's not uncommon to get messages at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning that says, "Oh, sir, can you help me with this?" I had a student this week on Monday. No, it was Sunday night, late Sunday night, saying, "Have we got school tomorrow?" Why am I telling you this? The answer is yes, and he didn't. But, let's kind of focus on sixth forms. What is the sort of relationship between sixth forms and universities? Is there pressure coming from? Again, we can talk about it a little bit later as well, but sort of changing strategies from universities and in how to acquire the students they want. Relationship there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that things have changed quite a lot, and I think that some universities have always tried really, really hard to make those links with schools. We're really fortunate that we do quite a lot of outreach, and universities tend to want to come into our school to speak to the students. I was at the Net Sixth Form conference is it November? Which I don't know if you've ever actually, you've definitely done it, haven't you? It used to be in London and now it's online.
Yep.
You done that?
No.
It's an all-day one where you get lots and lots of different sessions. And one of the things that they spoke about, they sent a lady to come and speak to us all from UCAS, and it was really interesting because she was talking about the lie of the land in terms of how many applicants they've had and sort of the projection. And their sort of idea, or the government's idea, was that they wanted 3/4 of all young people to be applying to university.
Yeah.
And I would probably say that we probably, as a school, we probably look at about 85 to 90, possibly even slightly higher than that. But we would always expect a student to try as many different avenues, because a 16-year-old may not, in quite a lot of cases that we found, know exactly what they want to do when they're at that stage when they need to start making these decisions, which is, halfway through year 12.
Yeah.
So we have also got an amazing apprenticeship academy, we call it, at our school, where we've got a careers advisor who's an external person that comes in to support us, and we've come up with a program for our sixth form where it's like an assessment centre theoretically, and it's weeks of building up those skills in order for them to then be able to work through the interview process, because it's quite a lot that they have to do. It's online applications, it's then online videos, for example, then it's the interviews, then it's goldfish bowls, then it's the actual panels. So there's quite a lot to do really for apprenticeships. And UCAS obviously have started offering apprenticeships as well through the degree apprenticeships. And so they're doing work on that, if I'm really honest, as well, from what the lady spoke to us about. But in terms of what universities are actually doing, their outreach seems to be quite good. And as I said, there are some universities that seem to be better at this than others. For example, we have a uni come in and speak to our students about finance, which is really important because young people don't really understand about applying for a loan, that actually that loan probably isn't going to cover their living costs and all of those sorts of things as well. So we're super grateful for that. You know, it is a bit of promotion for the university. We totally get that. But equally, you know, I've heard cases where universities are opening up courses, taking on as many applicants as they can. So one of the issues that we're finding is that we're quite strict about the grades that we predict. But then what happens is on results day, it's been known that some students have got onto courses at very good universities for 1 or 2 grades lower than what we've predicted. And it kind of then makes us feel like, have we underpredicted students, but we're standing firm that actually we feel that we've got our methodology right, because should it go the other way, there'll be a lot of young people that will end up missing out on those places at uni.
It feels like a bit of a game at the moment. You know, you look at some university courses that are you're sort of advertising at AAB. I think even UCAS have put in the actual grades of entry, right?
Which they do now. Yeah,
it's not necessarily the most useful metric because it doesn't contain all of the things. I think it's predominantly A levels, right? I don't know if they even factored BTECs into it, but you know, you're seeing universities that are offering a AAB, and then the student will get 3 Cs and they're still going into university. And it feels like a game a little bit. And that definitely makes it trickier for sixth forms and teachers, I think, in terms of the predicted grades. You know, we're now seeing university uptake going from 8% through to 19% in the 80s and 90s to now, you know, the aim under Blair was 50%. The aim now under Keir Starmer is 3/4. You know, and results are getting better. More and more students are going to university. Degree levels are getting better.
Yeah.
Is it because we're just that good at teaching? Is that what it is? Is that what it is? Or is there, I don't know, is there a game afoot? But I mean, you talked about careers advice, which sounds like an incredible experience for the students that you have. But is this going to be maintainable with the sort of difficulties that sixth forms are often finding with meeting their budgets?
Yeah, I think we offer nearly 30 A levels, and that's quite a number at the moment. Yeah. I thought that was actually common practice across the country, but I've since realised it probably isn't. And that isn't because schools don't want to, it's because they can't afford to. Yeah. And, you know, schools are having to be really creative. There, for example, you know, before they may have given 5 hours a week to an A-level subject, they're now having to drop down to 4 or 3, and then the students are then having to pick up that extra work in study periods or whatever you'd like to call it. And, you know, schools are now having to, I think it's becoming more common that students are now having to obviously buy their own devices, for example. We're not quite at the stage, I don't think, of students having to buy their own paper or exercise books. But again, I have heard cases of schools having to do that. Textbooks, for example, yep, that's definitely something that most students now are being expected to cover, whereas historically it was never a thing. You know, you numbered your books or you stamped your books and then you gave them out and then just expected them to be handed back in. And I know some schools still do that, but sort of at A-level, the students are writing notes in and things like that. So, yeah, it's getting like squashed quite a lot, to be honest, and things are becoming more expensive as well.
Yeah, I also think with the curriculum review, they're sort of looking to increase the amount of time necessary for teaching. I think the real cost is going to be about £1,700. I'm trying to think if it's per student, but it's a huge increase. And bearing in mind things are under sort of the rates of inflation already, sixth forms are only going to struggle. So you imagine that pool of 30 subjects, if that were the average in schools, is going to get whittled to the most popular courses. How can you fill your courses? I mean, we see it certainly with some universities as well who are doing this to fill their courses, and they're sort of holding it in a conference hall, right, or in a hotel lobby, and then sort of sacrificing them off. Look, is there anything that maybe people are missing the point about with sixth form? Is there anything that the sort of policymakers and or the budgets, the purse string holders are sort of misunderstanding about sixth form life?
I think there probably needs to be more money with regards to, I suppose, it's more like the soft skills that we've spoken about. Instead of them sort of expecting that schools are delivering this on a bit of a shoestring and almost doing it with, I know a lot of schools tend to use teachers that have one period under on their timetable, for example. It really needs to be skilled people that really want to buy into this and actually educate our young people about their next steps, what life looks like afterwards, about all of these different topics that actually young people do need to actually familiarise themselves with and know about for their future.
Look, if you do have any questions, please do post them online for Daniela or for myself. And as we move towards the end of the show, we will debate, we will discuss, we will challenge, we will question, we will thoughts. We look to see whether or not the sixth form does provide those transformative solutions. So for our next feature, it is the shout out board. Is there anyone out there who needs a shout out? There teachers or leaders who are deserving of a little extra recognition, a little kind word, or a bit of generational educational love? Comment if you're listening live, and we will share it. Or you can direct message me on LinkedIn if you're catching up. So Daniela, we move on. The show moves into part 3. It's something I find really fascinating. I am someone who's really sort of interested in the sort of mental health landscape, and also in the sort of understanding the skills and where our young people are at. And so resilience is one of those terms that's bandied about a lot. It's thrown in with the sort of Angela Duckworth grit. It's thrown in with growth mindset. And it's sort of thrown all around. So I really want to kind of get to grips with it. And let's talk about resilience. What are you seeing in your young people, in your sixth form, when it comes down to their resilience?
I think that they want to be like super mature, and most of the young people, I feel like the young people probably are a bit more streetwise with respect of how sort of social aspects work. However, it does tend to be that actually when you try and get them to think past school, especially at the beginning of sixth form, they just assume that they're going to have this path and it's going to be really plain sailing, and that all they're going to have to do is actually just go to lessons, do the exams, and then everything falls into place. And actually, when you start to look at, when you say to them, well, what would you like to do in the future? And they sort of say, well, I'm not sure yet. Okay, that's fine. But what are you going to do about it? And I think that we've spent time trying to get them to see that actually exploring generally about different futures or pathways or next steps is completely acceptable. It doesn't mean that that's what you absolutely have to do. So gap years is something I think parents are really quite scared of their young, their child doing. But I think that gap years actually can give so many skills, so much life experience that actually we can't at the moment teach within schools because maybe for safeguarding reasons and how, restricted we are about certain aspects of education. Risk assessments, those kinds of things actually do make it a bit more difficult for us to be able to give them real life experience, if that makes sense. So we have a company that come in and speak to our young people about gap years as well. And, even if they don't decide that gap year might be for them, it does get them to think that actually change is afoot. And actually, I do need to start thinking about what that next step might look like. So we sort of encourage them to try and get a part-time job as well, because I feel that that's really, really important in terms of lots of different skills.
Do many of your students have part-time jobs?
Yeah, quite a lot. And it's so nice, but in a way we sort of say to them, just be careful that you're not actually doing too many hours, because then it sort of counteracts what we're trying to achieve here. And you see a lot of growth in young people when they're in a different environment, or they might be working with different people, for example. And, you know, like we've talked about, the boys coming into the sixth form definitely adds a completely different dynamic, a really positive one, because it just creates like a whole different feel within the year group. And because we interview every single student once they start in sixth form, because as heads of year and head of sixth form, we feel it's really, really important that we sort of get to know them as quickly as possible. So we start off with the new students in our school, and then obviously we have the previous students as well. And lots comes out of that too. And you can get a real feel if, you know, a student, for example, lacks confidence, or if a student is someone who has got lots of confidence, or has done lots in the past. And also it then gives us sort of an avenue to then start putting them into their volunteering roles. So one of the things that we try and do to build that resilience is our school have got, I think it's over 50 different opportunities for volunteering. So that's everything from sort of key stage 3 support. We're very fortunate to have 2 local special provision primary and a secondary school. So quite a few of our students are really excited about going over there and helping out. And some of those students that go over, they come back changed. And this is all like, do you remember that the government used to talk about cultural capital?
Yep.
And it was that extra that actually, it wasn't about getting them to go out on a school trip and those sorts of things. It's about living real life experiences that you wouldn't normally get if you just sat in your normal classroom at school. And I think there's a lot to be said about those experiences that actually need to be different to what it would be the norm at any school, really.
You know, controversially, is it these kind of things that maybe do affect the resilience of our young people, but not necessarily in a positive way? I'm thinking about my own time at sixth form. What was that, like 10 years ago? When I was a student, and you know, like we didn't have any of that sort of experience. There was, you know, we had a careers kind of person who said, look, you can be a teacher or you can be a soldier, right? Off you go. And that was it. You know, I can imagine her just sneaking into the broom cupboard at the back of the room and having a cigarette. You know, it's like, I mean, I did become a teacher, but I don't think that was because of the worldly cares advice I had. It's because I had 2 options: to be a soldier or be a teacher. But you know, like, again, at sixth form, did I really know? Did I really know anyone? Did I have those kind of pastoral meetings? Did anyone sort of talk to me about volunteering opportunities? Yeah, between you and me, it's just us 2 here, right? Like, actually, are young people just not less resilient nowadays? And you know, we encourage that through schools, through these kind of supported meetings. Do they not maybe toughen up?
I think that there is definitely an element of that. And I think that parents need to be thanked here as well for probably making their children's lives just a bit easy. You know, we haven't talked about the whole sort of parent conversation at all. But, you know, students are, they can be very resourceful sometimes, and they know exactly what, and there are some students who will be quite astute and know exactly what buttons to push, how to play their parents, for example, how to play teachers at school. But if we're talking generally, I think that, yes, that, you know, we do need to build them with that resilience. And you're absolutely right. When we were at school, it was very much we had to work things out for ourselves. But I don't think that the exams were anywhere near as pressured as they are now. No. You know, let's be honest. I know that you obviously are, you know, super studious, but did you revise lots for GCSEs?
Yeah. No, not at all. Not at all. Like, not at all. I went down to the library. I made the effort. I know that. I absolutely know they made the effort. But
you
I
probably
was very
weren't taught
distracted
how
as
to
we were.
revise, or
No,
you weren't
never taught how to revise.
Yeah.
And you know, teaching. Like I do sort of stand by the notion that teaching has got so much better.
Yeah.
You know, it was much more the traditional sort of chalk and talk kind of approach. In terms of how we deliver, and I see so much creativity in there. And also I agree, like, you know, there was no pressure, there was no one saying you need to go out and get these grades. You know, I applied for university, I got better grades than I thought I would at A-level, and I went through clearing, but that was it. But you know, you work all these things out on your own. But at the same time, you know, we're talking about a period of time where maybe 19% of students were going to university, whereas we're now pushing for 75% of students to go to university. We want them to be aspirational, and sometimes they need that support, right?
Yeah.
And you know, maybe that's part of the evolution that I've seen in there, is that we do force them to sort of maybe be a little bit less resilient and hold their hands a little bit more, because we're desperate for those exam results, because we think that's the best way to open up the door for them to have the success they want in the future, right?
Yeah. I think they're petrified of making mistakes as well. You know, I think that's why I probably like teaching design and technology as well, because a lot of it is about making mistakes or getting to the point where you're stuck on a certain point, and then actually you need to work out and problem solve how you get through that. And yeah, I've been really lucky to see some, what I would consider some really, really quiet and shy young ladies who have actually gone through GCSE and then A-level, and then have gone on to do the most amazing things, and they come back and speak to our students about their journey. And I do believe that actually young people hearing about alumni coming back and speaking about their experience, and that actually it's okay to be that nervous student, or it's okay to be that student that had like quite high anxiety, or didn't necessarily fit in with the norm, or, you know, all of those things. We probably don't celebrate that enough. And if we try to as educators, they don't necessarily believe us. It's always, you know, we learn best, or the young people tend to sort of listen more when it isn't necessarily that teacher that stands in front of them every single day. It's someone new, fresh.
Yeah, agreed. You know, like how then do we balance the sort of academic expectations that we have for our young people, and also sort of their well-being as well?
I talk to them, like actually ask them, you know, try and get them to be really honest, and not put on some sort of bravado that, you know, you've got to be all of the same. It's okay not to have a great day today, and it's okay to own that. But equally, I do think, you know, the key is about communication, and about us sort of instilling in them a level of trust that actually they can be open about when they're not having a great day, or things haven't gone their way. And it's about talking through, well, okay, it hasn't gone well, but what are you going to do about it now? Because that's not going to change. So what do you do going forwards, and what lessons can you actually learn from it yourself?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's something that's often neglected, right? It's just that conversation, having a conversation with it. Yeah, is that the most effective strategy you've seen? Are there other sort of strategies you would couple with that help sort of build genuine resilience in our young people?
I think it's putting them in uncomfortable situations, and getting them to work out for themselves that actually the world's not going to end because you've been put in a group with people that you wouldn't normally go with yourself, or that actually you're being expected to meet a deadline, and actually that isn't going to move, and you need to have the grade that actually, you know, is at that point, and actually it hasn't ruined the rest of your life. I think that there's some lessons there. Yeah.
Bring back corporal punishment?
No.
Sorry, no one heard you there because of the applause. If you do have any questions for either myself or Daniela, please, as we're moving towards the end of the show, post your comments and we'll debate, discuss, challenge, and question your thoughts. So in true teacher fashion, let's take a marking break. Daniela, when you're not thinking about sixth form pressures, when you're not thinking about that design and technology classroom, what is helping you to unwind? What's helping you to be a human being?
Seeing friends who we've not seen for a long time over Christmas. Trying to be the best mum that I can, though my children are probably just outside the door now, like cackling to themselves. I've taken up a New Year's resolution. Did I tell you this?
No.
So I did an assembly today about New Year's resolutions, and we were talking about stepping outside your comfort zone, but actually that New Year's resolution shouldn't be, you know, every January. It should be goal setting, and they should be habits and long term and those kinds of things. Anyway, I am learning the clarinet.
You're learning the clarinet? That is awesome.
So by Christmas, what I'm hoping is that I'm going to be able to do a Christmas concert for my family.
So what? Right, this is coming to me now. Right, what we could do is in a second's time, you can go and get your clarinet. You can play and in a year's time, we'll see how you've progressed. That would be.
I'm quite happy to come back in a year's time with the clarinet. Not now.
Okay. So, guys, you heard it live or on podcast?
Well, I literally started last night. So I've done about 4 bars of Away in a Manger.
Look, there's about 100 comments that just come in that said, play it now. No, okay. Do you know, for me, one of the things I do, I'm a closet Warhammer fan. And so I play a bit of Warhammer. I love kind of meeting up with a group of buddies that I have here in Luxembourg. I have a great buddy back in the UK, and that's kind of how we sit down and chat. We kind of have those very manly conversations. You know,
we're not telling you that we brought Risk.
Because of you. Risk is a great board game.
Because of you.
Thanks very much.
They call it the Uncle Tim game.
And they throw it out the window every time we get out of the box. Okay. So shout out for Hatchet Learning. This show is brought to you in partnership with Hatchet Learning. We're delighted that they are involved in our shows. They are publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit www.hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. Part 4, looking forward. So we're going to spin through a few questions here on sort of completing our 6th form arc and what maybe the future could look like. And so for teachers and leaders who are listening and they want to better support their 6th form students, what is a simple first step, Daniela?
I think it's similar to the answer that I've just given. I think it is about learning who they are, what makes them tick. There's a conversation, isn't there? Do you try and get the pastoral right and the behaviour right before you can actually get really good teaching? Or do you actually need to get the teaching and learning right before the behaviour then improves? I've always been more, people-led. So for me, I do feel that it's a key thing that could be for any person who's looking to get into 6th form leadership. It's about understanding definitely where the pressures are within 6th form and how it actually is different to lower school, but actually also seeing that this is a big moment in their life. You know, they're trying to transition from effectively being a child into adulthood in actually a very short space of time.
6 weeks, right? The summer holidays. It's huge, right? The expectations we have at GCSE, from them sitting the exams and taking that 6 to 8 weeks out for the summer and then arriving at 6th form is that they're treated like completely different people with skills that we've never taught them. And then we'd say, look, they're not working hard enough. They're not independent enough because we've not necessarily taught them how to. If you could change one thing then about 6th form education, if you could change it tomorrow, like what would it be?
I think, we've talked quite a lot about feeling that the young people might not quite be ready for that next step. This is massively radical, but I think really Key Stage 3 probably could be cut down to 2 years, or it could start earlier now. And it would mean then that you could have 3 years of doing A-level. But within that 3 years, you'd also have a programme that would actually build in that resilience, get them problem solving, do projects that actually meant that you go out into the community and actually help out. So that would be probably the thing that would be the one big thing that I'd try and change.
Interesting. So you would look maybe at GCSEs at the end of year 10? Or would you scrap GCSEs full stop?
I'm not sure. I don't know whether it would actually be better just to keep it as it is, but actually sixth form would be like 16 to 19 as opposed to it being 16 to 18.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of strategies like books or role models that have really shaped your thinking on sort of developing as a head of sixth form and thinking about how to develop your sixth formers?
Yeah, I think I've been really lucky that I've had some really great predecessors. And then obviously friends that have gone through the sixth form. I think we spoke briefly about Dylan William when he brought up a couple of things about education and stuff like that. I think I do try to tend to read quite a lot about kind of people's outlooks. I know, we're talking about growth mindset. So Vesper learning is actually quite a big one that people tend to sort of use. We're actually coming up within our school, and it's our school name, and we've come up with certain words that we expect our sixth form to have when they actually leave our school. And I suppose there can be a danger sometimes about reading too much from people about their thoughts. I think as professionals, we need to look close to home at our own settings and what we've learnt and also what's in front of us. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you have a great idea and then you think, I can just sort of drop that in and it might look perfectly in our school, and actually it doesn't work at all. So I think that there's something in that as well. Equally, we're trying to make it a bit more collaborative locally with the sixth form. Sixth form is one of the funny ones where some schools see it as complete competition. Yeah. We're not like that at all. It has to be the right students in the right school. And so we're very much about trying to actually get our people either in our school, the local students, into the right places. And if that happens to be our school, amazing. If it happens to be the school down the road, that's fine as well. Yeah.
I guess that takes leadership who are very, very comfortable in the sort of vision of the school and what they're doing in the day. I work in a state school now here in Luxembourg. I've worked in private schools where you were looking for opportunities to collaborate, but the bottom line in the sort of international schools that were more competitive, they were fee-paying schools, and they were looking at academic results, was that you really couldn't work together and play nicely. Working in a state school now, I feel like there's much more opportunity for that kind of conversation, and that's a really powerful kind of message to take away. Look, where do you see sixth form education heading in the next few years? Are we going down a positive route? Are we going down the yellow brick road as we kind of look at the changes being proposed by the government, or
I think it depends what government is in at what time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, sixth form probably hasn't changed that much in quite a long time. I certainly feel that there's value in that sort of sixth form period, because I do feel that there needs to be a transition. I can't see, I mean, one of the things that the review sort of brought out is that A-levels essentially are exactly as they should be, and they should, they're not going to actually look into them anymore because they seem to be doing what they were intended to always do. Obviously with the slight change from T levels, and now they're starting to introduce the V levels, and that's purely by them trying to give like a level playing field about these guided learning hours as well, which is really important. The school that I'm at, we actually only do A levels, and that's because we're very fortunate in our local area to have a couple of really good colleges, and then some other schools that do offer BTECs and those kinds of things as well. So I think our local sort of offering is very secure on it being shared out rather than actually all trying to do exactly the same thing. I can't see we need to have like a vocational route for young people as well. I know the government are actually trying to introduce some slightly different types of qualifications about, defence and those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I think apprenticeships has really started to pick up speed now. Apprenticeships they've talked about for years. I don't know if you remember years ago they had like the YTS schemes and those kinds of things, whereas now apprenticeships really does seem to be carrying or holding its own. And again, we've had students that have come back to us to actually talk about their experience in the apprenticeship world, and it's really positive. There's some really excellent employers out there who believe that actually young people can do things. I think that there was always a bit of a worry that even young people that were coming out of university weren't very streetwise or didn't have any common sense, for example. We know that that's not true at all. But there could have been a risk with taking on students at 16 or 18 straight into working, forward, outward facing. And the sort of stories that I've heard have actually paid off, to be honest.
Is that sort of positive approach, though, with the context of us having A-levels and BTECs as well as apprenticeships? I know James Cohen, who was the Sixth Form and Colleges Association kind of deputy chief exec, I think that's his title, was kind of warning, like with BTECs now being defunded and in the future kind of rolling out the V levels, are we then going to reduce the options for our young people and therefore actually make it much harder for future generations?
The presentation that I saw about the V levels seemed quite good in terms of what they're trying to offer, because they're offering different guided learning hours and those kinds of things, and it then leads to different weightings. And I know we've always had that, but I guess it was really to try and weed out those sort of qualifications where people weren't actually sure what that qualification would actually lead to, or what they were actually doing in terms of the actual learning side of it. So I guess that's the idea behind that, really.
Okay, so one last question in this section. I have a sort of LinkedIn friend who is sort of considering kind of future steps with her own career. And one thing that we've kind of talked about in our virtual world is about the role of head of sixth form. What advice would you give to someone who's considering a head of sixth form role? Is it a great job? What is good about it if it is a great job? What's terrible about it if it's not?
I'm probably the worst person to ask this because I just love my job. I just feel like I'm so lucky that I've been doing this job for over 20 years, and every sort of term, every year, it's the payback you get from young people. And, let's be honest, we all know that there's going to be that one student or that one parent that actually is not very grateful. But we transform lives. That's what we do. And I don't think you can ever underestimate what we do for those young people. And I constantly say this to them. I'm like a broken record because they've all heard it. I feel privileged to be part of that journey that they're on. A lot of people don't give enough credit to young people. And it is an absolute pleasure to be able to even get an insight into what goes through their head. Sometimes you don't want to know what it is, but the majority of the time, it's all things that actually we went through. And I often say to the students, because of this conversation, I'm actually going to go away and I'm going to reflect on what we talked about, and it's hopefully going to make me a better mum, or it's going to make me a better wife, or a better sister, or a better daughter, because I do think it should all be about those sort of relationships and the communication. Maybe that's what we've sort of let go a bit because of the social media. It's the doom scrolling, and it's you get caught up in actually watching or listening to something instead of actually just reflecting and just stopping for a moment and just taking in what you've just learned or heard. I
mean, I would say that it was a job I loved, was being a head of sixth form. It was exciting. You had to innovate. You're working with creative, talented, inspired young people who are going off in so many different directions. And there's no bad direction as long as they're getting the support and the love and kindness that they need. And I loved identifying with young people in that way. I love teaching A-levels now. I love teaching GCSEs. I love working with all the students and developing those relationships. And now without those kind of head of sixth form roles, you know, I do miss it, but I also love being a classroom practitioner. So I kind of get a bit of both at the moment. So Daniela, we have nearly made it to the end of the show. But this is the bit that, well, when I speak to certain people who listen to the show, this is the bit they wait for. And, you know, there's like, I'm getting through the show, okay. And this is our quick fire quiz. So, Daniela.
Is that a sound effect?
That was a sound.
Oh, it was.
There is no expense spared on my sound effects. Right?
Do it again.
I can't beat sound effects. Exactly, yes. Daniela, read the script notes, yeah? Oh, Christ. But this is where I fill you with fear. As we go into our quick fire quiz round, I will ask you a series of questions, and you have to answer those questions as quickly as possible. You will have 1 minute in which to answer as many questions as you can. The record has been set by Adam Seymour at 10. No, 10. Samina last week, I let her get through 3.
Oh.
It took 45 minutes, and a shout out of love to Samina. But yeah, it was, I asked her a question that really just stumped her. She's like, I don't know. Like, you know, so it was get through 3 and you're going to be absolutely fine. Are you ready?
No.
One word that sums up sixth form leadership.
Transformational.
If you could instantly master any subject, what would it be?
History.
If your sixth form had a theme song, what would it be?
Don't Stop Believing.
What is your guilty TV pleasure that students will be shocked to know you watch?
Slow Horses.
We all know it's Love Island. Most common question you get asked by your students?
Why are you so happy all of the time?
What school supply would you never want to run out of?
Bic pens, but very light specific ones, crystal Bic pens.
You know, it's a short answer question, right? What do any of the words Sigma, skibidi, or cooked mean?
Happy.
I don't think any of them mean happy. Coffee or tea to survive the day?
Oh, tea.
What is the most ridiculous excuse a sixth former has given you for missing a deadline? I think the big question slows you down there. You got very particular about your choice of stationery.
You need to be.
I find it really hard to walk away empty-handed from a stationery shop, right? Okay. Teachers Talk Connect is back. Our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. Join the TTR team on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. Tickets are free. So what are you waiting for? Head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026 and have a look at the fantastic lineup of speakers who are already scheduled to be speaking at the event. So dear listeners, please do not forget to like, download, connect, and interact. With your support, we can make sure that teachers have a voice in education. We have no one on the shout out board. So just a bit of educational love for all of you teachers out there. I hope you've had a smooth transition back to school. I sincerely hope you're doing your snow dances tonight and getting ready for a day off tomorrow. Pub day. And that's about it. I think I was going to end with a dodgy AI impression because that's the future of teaching. No, I'm not going to do that at all. So you've been listening to The Late Show. I want to say a huge thank you to my very special guest, Daniela Schillaci Rowland, who has helped contribute to a wonderful show. My name is Tim Smale. I'm signing out for the night. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you to you for tuning in. And thanks very much for the show, guys.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused,